Austin Jordan and transfer Kylin Jackson are going to give some serious depth to this TCU secondary this upcoming season.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. I've been covering TCU athletics for the past 12 seasons. Thank you for making Locked On Horned Frogs your first listen. We're brought to you by FanDuel today. New customers on the FanDuel app or at FanDuel.com get $150 in bonus bets if they win their first $5 bet. I'll tell you about that later on in the show. Also later on in the show, a couple of pro frogs, a couple NFL guys getting new deals in free agency. That happened earlier this week, but I wanted to sit down and have a chance to talk about it with you. So we'll discuss that in segment 2. Big baseball weekend as TCU baseball kicks off conference play against Arizona State. But we start today with a new series we're going to be doing about TCU football over the coming weeks. And we're calling this our underrated players series. These are guys that maybe got lost in the shuffle, or when you think about projections and depth charts and who the key contributors could be for this upcoming season, you probably just don't factor them in. Maybe you forget about them. They quietly had a good year last year, or they showed some flashes last season. And I've said this before, it's so easy to get caught up in the transfer portal, and rightly so. Like, it's cool to think about new faces, new players. How do they fit in within TCU's system? How can they contribute? But there's also guys on the current roster. In this case today, I'm going to talk about one dude that's been on the roster, one dude that's transferring in, who can step up and make things happen, can improve during the offseason, and step into a bigger role. So we're going to talk about the secondary group and specifically the safeties. Trey Watson, new safeties coach, comes over from Cal this offseason. Andy Avalos hires him off Justin Wilcox's staff. Bud Clark's coming back for like year 37. Just kidding, but you know what I mean. Bud's been around for a long time. I think that's a big boost for TCU that he'll be starting in the secondary and will be part of this defense. You also have Jamel Johnson, who was in the portal briefly, but they were able to convince him to come back. Jordan Lester is a guy that will be coming back for another season. Devin Hidalgo from Franklin, Texas, sort of an under-the-radar recruit who will be coming in for another year. But two players that I want to highlight today, Austin Jordan and Kylin Jackson. Austin Jordan played in every game last season. Now, he wasn't a starter, but he had contributions in every game. Played in all 13 games, had a sack in the New Mexico Bowl. 2.5 of his 16 tackles were for loss. Had tackles for loss against Oklahoma State and Houston. Had 4 tackles against Houston, which was a season high. Had 3 tackles against Texas Tech. Quarterback hurry. So they used him in a variety of different ways. This defense that Andy Avalos runs, there's a emphasis on hybrid players, guys that can play different positions. And Austin Jordan's story is sort of intriguing. He was at Texas. He was a very highly rated safety recruit from Denton Ryan. He played some safety and some corner at UT, and he was part of the transfer portal class last offseason. And oftentimes when we are evaluating guys in the portal, we just think about immediate impact. Because in a number of cases, these are experienced players, sometimes grad transfers, maybe juniors and seniors, that have had production at their previous school, and they're looking for a new place where they can continue to develop, grow, maybe get more opportunities. So for Austin Jordan, I mean, he comes in, and while he was a contributor last year, he wasn't somebody that made a lot of waves. And sometimes I think we can forget with the portal, it's almost like, it's not always like this, but in some cases, it's kind of like a high school recruit. They might not make it an immediate impact, even though Jordan was a dude that played. You might not see him every week from the jump, but if they have multiple years of eligibility, there is the chance that they could grow and develop over time. So Austin Jordan had a season where he played significant snaps. He got to watch Bud Clark. He got to watch some guys like Cam Smith when he was healthy and some other veterans. Now he has a feel for what TCU's doing. He understands what Andy Avalos wants to see. And he might end up being your starting nickelback. When TCU is in some 3 safety looks, I think he's going to be the guy. And I feel like he could push Jamel Johnson a little bit too. But even if he's not a starter by that definition, he's going to be someone that plays significant snaps, and having his versatility, because he's got good size. I mentioned earlier he had a sack. He had multiple tackles for loss. He can come down in the box and make plays, which you have to have that in this defense. He's 6'1", 210 pounds. You need guys that can come up in the box and make those things happen. And you also need players that can run sideline to sideline and be effective in coverage and be athletic. Austin Jordan can do that. He's shown an ability. He played some corner in his college career. He can line up one-on-one with a skilled player and run with them, but he can also step up to the line of scrimmage or near the line of scrimmage. He can be someone that you use on blitzes from time to time, or that you just use in the run game, making sure that you have an extra body up there so people aren't running past you. And TCU is going to need that. Now, hopefully, the defensive line, the linebackers play at a higher level this year, and your front 7 gives more resistance in general. But you also need guys coming from different angles and making plays in the run game and making sure that teams aren't running for 6, 7, 8 yards on first down like they did a lot of the time last year. The role that I would like to see Austin Jordan play this season is the role that's being left by Abe Kamara. Now, Abe Kamara, again, versatile guy, JUCO transfer, was physical, could come up and pop people, had that huge hit in the Houston game where unfortunately got ejected for targeting. I thought that was a Bush League call. And honestly, I thought that changed, that really flipped that ball game in a big way. But Abe brought physicality to the table. He also had a huge hit in the KU game against Jalen Daniels on an option play. 55 tackles total last year. But Abe was a dude that could play in coverage. But really, where he excelled was he was a thumper. And he was almost identical in size and frame-wise to Austin Jordan. 6 feet tall, 190 pounds was what he was listed at. And they would use him in blitz packages sometimes. He would come up and could make stops in the run game. He was also, he had the ability to run with people and play in coverage. But he brought versatility to this defense. And Austin Jordan has some similar traits and showed flashes of similar things last season, specifically late in the year. You heard those games I mentioned: Oklahoma State, Houston, the bowl game against Louisiana, back third of the season, right? And I don't know if it was, there were a couple of guys like that on the defensive side of the ball. Jonathan Bax comes to mind too, where he made some plays late. And I'm not sure if it was just the defensive staff getting more comfortable with these players and understanding, okay, this is how we need to use this guy. Or they finally showed us some things in practice that make us feel comfortable enough that we can start implementing them in the game on a week-to-week basis. Because Jordan played every game, but he'll be stepping into a bigger role this year. And in the portal, you have got, so like we take, for instance, this year's class. You have a guy like Ansel Denbu, who is going to be a starter right away or in the mix right away on the interior defensive line. Maybe not a starter, but he's going to play. Had 6 sacks last year at Washington State. There's not going to be much of a ramp-up period for him. He's going to walk in. He's going to be someone they expect to play almost immediately and make plays. So you have those guys. You have, and Ansel's not even like a grad transfer. He's still a relatively young guy, but he's ready to go right now. And on the flip side, in the same transfer portal class, you got a dude like Rasheed Jackson from Incarnate Word, who I believe is an intriguing player. And I think it's a good pickup for TCU, but it feels more like a projection for the future. I don't believe he'll be starting this year. I'm not even sure he'll be someone that's a huge factor in the week-to-week competition for playing time. But he played a lot of snaps at the FCS level. He's still relatively new to football. He's got multiple years of eligibility. So TCU is banking on maybe not this season, but down the line, this is a dude who could contribute for us. And that's a valuable thing to have. So Austin Jordan, he played a lot last year. But now he could step into that starter role. He could be someone that is a depth piece. But the payoff is down the line. It's not right away and immediately with that specific transfer player. Kylin Jackson from LSU. He was ranked the number 11 safety in his recruiting class. Spent 2 seasons in Baton Rouge. Didn't play a lot. But again, sort of taking a chance on someone who has the physical traits that you want and should be able to come in and make some plays. 6'3", 200 pounds. He's from Louisiana originally. He played in 17 games over 2 seasons at TCU. Had 4 tackles in a quarterback hurry in 2024. Played in their bowl game. Had a very decorated high school career. Known as a playmaker, knows an athlete. Spent 2 years in Baton Rouge, didn't see the field a lot. Said, you know what? That's not where I want to be. He's going to provide really good depth for this TCU secondary. And it's a perfect situation to step into because he doesn't have to be a starter right away. But they can find where he fits. They can get a feel for what he can do, where he would be best on the roster, on the defense, and give him opportunities there. These are the types of guys that are going to make or break the season. You need your stars to play well. Josh Hoover's going to have to play at a very high level. Breaking news. That's why they pay me the big bucks to do this podcast. I think Josh Hoover's going to have a big season for TCU to be successful. Eric McAllister needs to be good. Marcus Deal, Devin Deal, they need to be good. And I think they will be. You also need your role players to step up. You need guys like Austin Jordan to take on a bigger snap count and do a nice job with it. That's the mix you have to have a successful season. When we come back, Kavontae Turpin and Trayvon Merrick signed big deals in NFL free agency. We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Nissan. Man, if you need a new vehicle, if you're interested in shopping, shop now at nissanusa.com. Go on your next big adventure with Nissan. We're all about the stats here on the Locked On Network, but numbers don't lie. And when it comes to the all-new Nissan Armada, the numbers are on an MVP level. It has the ability to tow up to 8,500 pounds. It can quite literally carry the whole team, plus the gear wherever you need to go. It's powered by a twin-turbo V6 engine, delivering the strength and performance to handle highways, back roads, and everything in between. It has room for up to 8 people. That even fits my huge family, 4 kids running around. The Armada PRO-4X is built for big crews, big adventures, and even bigger memories. Whether you're exploring off-road trails, rolling up to the arena, the Armada PRO-4X brings power, versatility, and style wherever you go. Take your adventures to new heights in the all-new Nissan Armada. Learn more at nissanusa.com. Again, that's nissanusa.com. Give them a try today. Nissan. Check out what deals they have at nissanusa.com. Also want to mention our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is where the game starts. They've been a loyal sponsor with us for a long time. March Madness is coming up. It is here. Check out this. New customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Again, that's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. That's for new customers on the FanDuel app or at FanDuel.com. There's going to be tournament games on almost every day, so you can jump in and get involved whenever you need to. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no waiting around. Visit FanDuel.com to get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. And that's FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app. Check it out today. So NFL free agency is going on, which is a really fun time of year. Not so much for me as a Cowboys fan because they don't believe it exists. They don't believe in free agency or participating in it, but I've heard other teams have great things to say about that. Now, I make that joke. One of the guys I'm going to talk about here, Kevontae Turpin, re-signed with Dallas. And Dallas does do a nice job of re-signing guys that contribute, sort of homegrown players. The Kevontae Turpin story has an outstanding season in the USFL. Cowboys pick him up, and he becomes their return specialist. They've used him in the offense some, not frequently, but he's sort of been their gadget guy, pop passes, jet sweeps, screen passes. He had that incredible kick return for a touchdown against the Commanders last year. He's been a Pro Bowl kick and punt returner for the last few seasons. He re-signed with Dallas, 3 years, $18 million. Good for him. I said this when I was talking about Jordan Bailey and what his season might look like, his ability to break out. TCU, this is probably not something they market. I don't know why it wouldn't be, but they're like slot receiver U to a certain extent. They've had a good history of, and it's guys that are sort of similar to this in that they're great athletes. They can be effective in the punt and kick return game. They can also be effective catching passes, being sort of gadgety guys. Darius Davis has carved out a nice role with the Chargers. Kevontae Turpin has done this with the Cowboys. Jalen Reagor is not really a perfect comp, but I mean, he had those traits and qualities from an explosive standpoint, and he's still bouncing around the league. I saw he signed with the Chargers as well this free agency period. Jeremy Curley, the list goes on of just guys that are good in the slot, can make plays on special teams. And Kevontae Turpin has found his role in the NFL. This is what he does. He is a return specialist. And he's doing it at a time, amazingly, where kick returns especially have basically become extinct. Like the new rules with kick returns and how they're trying to lessen contact, it's not like it used to be with the Devin Hesters of the world, where that was a huge play. And he's found a way to be effective, to help Dallas get good field position, and also has that ability to take the top off the, special teams unit and take it to the house and change the game. So he signs a new deal with Dallas, and he'll be sticking around for the next few seasons. Another pro frog that is signed a new deal, Trayvon Merrick, safety. He's been with the Raiders since he got drafted. He signs a 3-year, $51 million deal with the Panthers. He's coming off his best season at 104 tackles and 10 pass breakups. He played closer to the line of scrimmage this year, and he had 13 quarterback pressures, also a lot of tackles behind the line of scrimmage. Had 13 tackles in the game against Cincinnati, which was a career high. But Trayvon won the Thorpe Award back in the COVID season of 2021 or 2020. He was a great player, man. That was the last great, it was second last season, but that was the last great GP defense. And it didn't start that way. They struggled on defense early that year. But slowly, Trayvon Merrick and Garrett Wallow specifically became just absolute dudes. Merrick was a guy from the jump. Darius Washington was on that defense. And by the end of the year, they had a huge game against Oklahoma State. They played like a lighter schedule towards the end of the season too, but they shut down Kansas, Texas Tech, some other teams. They were really good on defense in the back half of that season. And Trayvon Merrick was a huge, huge part of that. And it's awesome that he's gone on to the NFL. And again, somebody who's found a role for himself, has figured out how to make it work. He's one of those hybrid guys that is a safety, but he can play down near the line of scrimmage and has the physicality and those gifts where he can be a tackler, where he can be someone who pressures the quarterback. So just awesome to see. TCU needs more of those NFL success stories. And I don't think it's so much for I honestly don't know how much scouts evaluate that aspect of it. Like I know with Jack Besh and Savion Williams, we've talked about, well, TCU wide receivers have a history of not doing well. I'm not sure how much they actually, like scouts and GMs actually look at that as opposed to just scouting the individual players, but it can't hurt to have a good track record at certain spots. And in the case of Devontae Turpin and Merrick, these are two guys who have made an impact in the league. When we come back, TCU baseball kicks off conference play tonight. We'll talk about that and more next here on Locked on Horned Frogs, your team every day. You ever open up that banking app and you're like, what the heck happened to my money? Where did it go? Monarch Money allows you to become your own personal chief financial officer and give you full visibility and control of your finances. It's not just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can put all your accounts in one place. You can stop managing your money and start building your wealth. You'll realize just how much you spend on different things and where you need to make some cutbacks. It's all in one convenience. So instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever with the Monarch Money app. It can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and allow you to stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for 50% off your first year. Give Monarch Money a try. Do it today. Take control of your financial goals and start building wealth and not just managing your money. TCU baseball kicking off conference play Friday, Saturday, and Sunday against Arizona State. Coming off a nice win over Texas State in the midweek slate. The bats have been hitting the ball better lately. Now, Fresno State, I mean, I think part of that was the competition they played, but they're really hitting the ball well. And now you get a taste of what this is going to look like when TCU hits the stretch of their schedule. Had a couple ugly weekends in Globe Life and then against Southern Miss, but since then I've been playing higher quality baseball. I think the weekend rotation, we'll see what the deal is with Caden Parker. He seemed to have an injury last week, so I'm not sure he'll be available at least tonight. But Parker, Lepore, and then you need to figure out that third starter. There's some nice pieces with your rotation, and there's some good pieces with your bullpen. It needs to all come together, though. Conference play in baseball always sneaks up on me. I'm like, oh, yeah, they got so many more games left. And I'm like, wait, no, they play Arizona State this weekend, and it's live and real. So good opportunity for TCU baseball to get the conference season started off on the right foot at home against the Arizona State Sun Devils. A couple of thoughts from yesterday's episode. So I talked about the need for help at the tight end position. Last year, they didn't get much there, but DJ Rogers coming back, he showed some good flashes last season. He was a factor. Now he's going to step into a bigger role. You also have a transfer in Kamorian Pimpton who could be used well. Off Track says tight ends, in my opinion, are short yardage options most of the time. Pimpton could be used a massive decoy in a spread, inside or out. Darnell Washington from Georgia is a great comparison. Pimpton is lighter but more athletic. Washington was a decoy with big play capabilities. All that said, Georgia could run the ball. Rogers and Curtis make a great tight end room. However, yeah, I mean, the first responsibility for tight ends is to move the chains. And that's what Jared Wiley did so well. And that was priority number one for him. He was a good security blanket for your QBs. And again, I said yesterday, like last year, the receiving core was so good, you didn't necessarily need a lot of help from your tight ends. But I think this season, you're going to need more help from them. And Pimpton, he's a super intriguing player. And I love all the options they could have with him in the passing game. But he's got to be physical too, right? And Rogers and Curtis can bring a lot of that, but you need him when he's in the game to also show that for this team to be at its highest level. Deion Lewis says, if healthy, I think Major Everhart will be a name to watch. Yeah, that's a good thought. I mean, I've been very caught up in the Jordan Bailey hype train this offseason, but Everhart is another name to know. And he did deal with injuries last year. I know he was another guy that Sundykes pointed out in spring camp last year, like took a huge jump and a huge leap just from the fact that he had been in the system for a season and seemed to have a better understanding for what they expected from him. But yes, Major Everhart's a good name to know. And he's another one of those guys that can make big plays, and TCU needs that to replace what they're losing with Savion Williams and Jack Besh heading to the NFL draft. We'll be back on Monday with plenty of coverage of all TCU athletics. It's Locked on Horned Frogs, your team every day. Subscribe to the YouTube channel or find us on your favorite podcast platform.